And I'm Peter Nicolino. We begin tonight's broadcast in San Francisco. President Joe Biden had a face-to-face meeting with China's Xi Jinping today amid talks of the world grappling with economic crises, wars in the Middle East and Europe, and tensions in Taiwan. The two leaders met at a country estate outside of San Francisco and are looking to get communication back on track after a year that saw tensions between the two nations rise. A man convicted in the 2006 killing of a Russian investigative journalist received a presidential pardon after a brief stint in fighting in Ukraine. The man, Sergei Kodshikorbanov, was sentenced to 20 years in prison in 2014 for his role as an accomplice in the killing of 48-year-old journalist Anna Politkovskaya. Politkovskaya worked for an independent Russian newspaper and wrote stories critical of Kremlin policies in the early years of Russian President Vladimir Putin's term. She was shot and killed in the elevator of her Moscow apartment block. The Oklahoma Supreme Court is keeping anti-abortion laws on hold while a challenge is pending. The state's constitution voted 5-4 today to guarantee a woman's right to an abortion to preserve her life. In a case involving the challenging of 5 anti-abortion bills passed by the state's legislature, a lower court has been ordered to keep a temporary ban on 3 of them. Pro-choice activists say the Oklahoma Supreme Court's decision is welcome news, but more needs to be done to guarantee Oklahomans access to abortion care. European Union nations say they may be failing a promise given to Ukraine. EU leaders promised Ukraine's front line 1 million rounds of ammunition by next spring, but many of the nations are finding it tough to come up with the ammo needed. Many officials, like Estonian Defense Minister Hanno Pevkur, expressed how crucial it is to ramp up production. A 75-year-old Comac man, Charles Limmer, has been indicted on charges of smuggling protected deceased butterflies. According to the United States Attorney's Office in Brooklyn, allegedly Limner labeled his shipments as, quote, decorative wall coverings or, quote, origami papercraft. The indictment filed yesterday accuses him of trafficking in multiple species of butterflies known as birdwings due to their exceptional size, angular wings, and bird-like flight. He is to be arraigned later and faces up to 20 years in prison if convicted. Charges include conspiracy to smuggle wildlife into the U.S., smuggling wildlife in and out of the U.S., and violations of the Lacey Act's prohibition on trafficking in and falsely labeling wildlife. WRHU News Time is 5:39. Thank you to Jordan and Isaac for those reports. New York District 3 Representative George Santos said today that he is vigorously contesting a new set of federal criminal charges to, quote, the bitter end, and has resisted renewed calls for his expulsion from Congress. Federal prosecutors filed a superseding indictment with 10 new charges yesterday, including wire fraud and identity theft. These charges were in addition to the 13-count indictment filed by prosecutors this summer, alleging that Santos defrauded campaign donors by using campaign funds for personal expenses, such as designer clothing. The new charges allege that Santos appropriated thousands of dollars from his campaign contributors by charging their credit cards without authorization. He also faces accusations of submitting fraudulent fundraising reports to obtain financial support from national political groups for his congressional campaign. Michael Cohen returned to the witness stand today in his ex-boss, former President Donald Trump's civil business fraud trial. Trump's defense team endeavored to undermine the credibility and question the motives of his one-time personal attorney turned adversary. Outside the courtroom, Trump's commentary led the judge to consider whether Trump had violated a limited gag order imposed earlier in the case. With Trump at the defense table, his lawyer, Alina Habba, confronted Cohen with comments he had made praising Trump before turning him on to when Cohen's legal problems started in 2018. Holtsville residents will soon hold meetings to discuss concerns over a recently approved battery storage unit. 2 weeks ago, the Public Service Commission authorized a budget of over $100 million to go towards the construction of a 6-acre facility that will store up to 124 lithium-ion batteries. The proposal was given the green light in an attempt to help lower New York's carbon emissions. Despite plans to move forward with the project, residents have grown fearful that the storage unit might be dangerous to the community due to previous reports of fires in various other similar facilities. Uncertainty about the building's safety has caused many Holtsville citizens to believe the venture should be put on hold until further evidence of viable conditions is made available. The group of 7 leading industrial democracies is calling for urgent action to help citizens facing the increasingly dire situation in Gaza. In a statement following the 2 days of talks in Tokyo, the nations say they are aiming to balance the need to help Palestinians and support Israel's right to self-defense. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that all parties in the group of 7 must allow for unrestricted humanitarian support for civilians, including food, water, and medical supplies. And that will do it for tonight's edition of Newsline. Many thanks to the entire WRHU News team. Engineering our show this evening is Yao Bonsu. Access real-time, local, Long Island, New York, and global news, along with content from WRHU Talent Monday through Thursday, 5:30 to 6 p.m. Lastly, check us out on social media at WRHU News for behind-the-scenes content. For Newsline, I'm Peter Nicolino.